Good afternoon, Perry Creek. Happy Team Day for Red Ribbon Week. Kim and I are both sporting our Hawkeyes. Go Hawkeyes!
Yay!
We are going to make some adjustments today in our PD because we did not anticipate that we were having a miniature instructional rounds occurring at Perry Creek on Wednesday. So we really appreciate all of you being flexible, and this will be interesting. So anyways, we have amended our agenda today to focus on the literacy block observation tool. We had planned to share this with you. If you look down here in our PD agenda, and I'll move this so you can see what we had initially planned down here, to share this on November 6th because the tool is in rough draft format right now. And we thought that by waiting, that would be beneficial for all of us. But with Dr. Buryanek and Dr. Reed coming to visit on Wednesday, we feel that we probably need to share this rough draft version so that you can at least know what people are observing in your classrooms. Okay, so today we will examine the rough draft of the Lit Block observation tool developed by Dr. Reed and Dr. Buryanek. We will collaborate within our PLCs to reflect on our level of implementation at Perry Creek. So this tool actually did start with what Perry Creek had used last year for our instructional rounds. I was not a part of where it went from there, and when you look at the tool, you might see parts of our Google form that we used, but it really doesn't look anything like what we had done. So I just didn't want you to think that, oh, Amy said this looks like our tool, and it doesn't. Okay, so they will pull it up on their computers, and right now this is kind of what Kim and I have been working on. And it's a kind of a big document. It's 18 pages and it's attached also in this email. So we scanned in the PDF version with our notes, but the tool looks kind of similar to our tool from last year with some changes. We are focusing on the literacy block at the elementary level. So people will be completing sections 1, 5, 6, and 7. There's a whole middle section of this walkthrough tool that focuses on instruction and engagement and objectives, and we will not be focusing on that right now. So with regards to the tool, they will select the content area, the classroom type, this piece right here that says reliability observation, that is regarding whether or not we have a downtown administrator observing with one of us. And the only way that that will be marked yes is if there's a downtown administrator observing with us. And then co-teaching, right now we are not implementing any co-teaching of special education teachers or ESL teachers within our literacy block, so our co-teaching value would be 0. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit because all of these sections are not pertaining to the literacy block. I'm sorry for my scrolling. Oops, I went a little too far. Okay, and we're at the literacy block. Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay, so our literacy block, and remember this tool is not in final draft form. This is rough draft, and Dr. Buryanek has taken some suggestions and we'll be revising it. But there are essentially 3 main components to the literacy block tool, and it's whole group, small group, and must-dos and may-dos. So those are the 3 big pieces, and each section repeats itself with regards to what we could be observing. So if we come into your literacy block and you're engaged in whole group instruction, we may complete one of these sections or maybe 2, because in whole group instruction, you should have a narrow focus. So I'm going to use first grade for an example because I was a first grade teacher. So if I were a first grade teacher, I would likely be teaching a whole group lesson based on a phonics skill. I could be teaching a whole group lesson on any of these components, but at this point in the year, I will probably be teaching a phonics lesson, and it could be on rhymes, R-I-M-E rhymes, such as at, and, or it, ought, something like that. And it could relate to a shared story that we read from Journeys. So if someone comes into my whole group instruction, they'll look at what my relative emphasis on phonics is. Is it and to what degree? Then probably nearly all of my whole group lesson would be focused on phonics. Some of it may be comprehension if we had a shared story and I'm going back to that shared story. Or if we're reading something together, it could have a little component of fluency. If I'm highlighting a vocabulary word that has one of the words that I'm teaching in the phonics lesson, it might have a little bit of vocabulary. But generally, my focus will be in phonics. And then we'll be looking at how much engagement was present with our students. Kim, am I forgetting anything with that section?
Nope.
Okay. So then we scroll down, and within whole group instruction, these will eventually be drop-down boxes containing or little tick boxes that we can say from a bank of things. What skills did we notice the teachers employing? What did the teacher do? What were the students doing? For this observation on Wednesday, we will just probably be making notes. So within whole group instruction, if I was teaching my first grade lesson in phonics, what specific skill? Well, I hope that they saw explicit instruction of, we'll just say at. Explicit instruction of at. So what does the teacher do? I model, I provide guided practice, I allow opportunities for students to turn and talk. That might be in there. And then what do the students do? Students are listening, they are responding chorally, they are contributing other words that have the at rhyme in them. So that could be that component. These other cells might be completely blank. If they're not observed, we don't expect them to be filled in. And we certainly don't expect your whole group lesson to include all of these components because that would be overwhelming. Anything else to add?
No.
Okay. So going down to whole group instruction, you'll see this color coding. This is an error. This was meant so that this section had color coding in it, and it's a long story. Anyways, don't worry about that. You'll notice in this whole group section, there are some items that don't pertain to whole group, and those will be removed from the tool. And so in the document, the PDF that Kim and I have attached for today, you'll notice those areas have been crossed off with some additional notes. But essentially, these are just yes, no. Were they observed or were they not observed? You'll see these stages over here where it says early or later, and that's just referring to the stages of implementation. So with regards to the literacy block, this is something that you would see in early implementation at this point in the year. Later implementation, that might be present now, or it might be something that we expect to be observed later in the year. But again, these, I think it's items, let's see, is it 4, 5, and 6? No, 5, 6, and 7 will not be part of whole group instruction because that's related to must do and may do. Okay, we're going to keep going. Oh. Scrolling. And again, some of these other pieces, there are notes on it that we likely will not observe use of manipulatives. I shared that this is not an area of focus for us, nor would I expect people to be using manipulatives in a whole group lesson necessarily when it's only like a 15 to 20 minute lesson. Okay. Although it could include if you were doing Elkonin boxes or pushing sounds or manipulating word tiles or letter tiles, that definitely could be a component, but I don't expect that to be a component. And remember, this is an observation tool. It is not meant to be something where we're looking for all of these things. It's just meant to help us collect data. Also, whole group instruction, this color coding is an error. and these will eventually be combined into a drop down. And it's just looking at what engagement strategies during the whole group lesson were provided to students. Oops. So, oh, it's not liking me. Okay. Then the next section is small group, and it's very similar in the components. So each of these rows is meant to be for a different group observed, and you'll notice that on the PDF document. So if we are in your room for only 15 minutes, we might only see one small group, and that's okay. So the rest of these rows will be blank. But if we're in there for longer, we might see two groups. And if we're in there for your entire literacy block, we might see all of these groups. So in this section, we will just identify the level of engagement and then what the focus was for the group that you were teaching.
And then there will be the drop-down menus added.
Yes. Yes. So Kim, why don't you go ahead and explain this part?
So then again, we will have a drop-down menu for each group that we watched or observed. And within that drop-down menu, we'll just be putting the number of students in the group, the start time, end time. What does the teacher do? That will be a generated list. Again, in our updated version right now in the rough draft, we will just be writing the generalizations of modeling, practice, those type of things. And what do the students do? What does the student work look like? Again, we will be having drop-down menus in the form that we will be using throughout the year, but for this one that we're using on Wednesday, we'll just be putting in information ourselves. Okay. And then that will be per group.
Right. So if we only observed one group, only one row would be completed. All right, so that was just for small group. The next section, and we're going to kind of go quickly because we're getting towards the end of our video, that is small group. Again, color coding is an error. You'll notice on the PDF there are some items that should be in the must do, may do, not in small group. And it's just a yes or no, was it observed? And that regarding early implementation and later implementation.
And numbers 7 and 9 in that are in the wrong section because they have the must do's and may do's, and we'll be looking at that more specifically during that component, which is the next section.
Thank you. Then again, that small group piece, and this is again regarding engagement strategies and student response.
It looks the same as
the same as the whole group. Okay, then it's our must do, may do section, and this is where whoever is observing will be looking at the students in their must do, may do's and which skill areas are they working in. And so you might, if you are a teacher and you have a variety of levels in your classroom, you might have students working on all of these, or you might not. If you're in an upper grade, if you're in 5th grade, you might just be having students work in fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Although, looking at our data, I think we will need to have some of our 5th grade students probably working in phonics. And then again, just like what Kim said, if there were groups working on these specific skills, so if you had differentiated based on groups or based on students, it might be looking at how many students did you have working in phonics. So if you're in a 5th grade class and 2 of your students are really struggling, you might have 2 students were working on this, and they were working on sorting words contextually or structurally. So that could have been a focus. You could have had, maybe there were 7 students practicing fluency and 5 students working on vocabulary for must-dos and may-dos. And then again, that color coding is an error. This is just looking at yes or no, whether or not these were present. And some of these things might not be observed in must do and may do. And then that takes us back into, oops, I'm keeping scrolling, back to the end where the must do's and may do section ends, and it just talks about some other things that we would see. So do not be stressed about this tool. It is rough draft form. We will give you feedback based on this observation. We have just a few seconds left in our video, so I hope this has been helpful, everybody. Please use this time to talk in your PLCs about what you observed.